Welcome to the Spinning Our Gears podcast, Season 4. As a reminder, all views, issues, and opinions discussed on the podcast are those of the hosts and their guests, and they don't reflect that of any agency, city, municipality, state, country, department, county. They don't reflect that of anyone else but us. Please stop suing us. All characters and individuals discussed on the podcast should be considered fictional for entertainment value only. The show is rated E for explicit. If we could make the E bigger, we would, because it is that explicit. Listener discretion is advised. You can catch this show on all the major podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube. And don't forget to go to spinningourgears.com. Check out all the cool stuff we have going on over there. Click that Contact Us link. Let us know who you are, where you're from. If the old www version of the web isn't your cup of tea, well then we're on social media platforms as well, including TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, maybe Twitter? But you will not find us on any sites ending in hub. Now, without any further fanfare or ado, please welcome your hosts, Turk, Swagger, Erica, and Kenyon. And once again, this is the Spinning Our Gears podcast. What is going on, Warriors, and welcome back to another episode of the Spinning Our Gears podcast. This is episode 3 of the year, I believe, and it's a very special episode because we're doing a little bit of a different format today. Life events have happened with all 4 of us, and for some reason we just can't get a matching schedule to get together. So I figured, let's do this for an episode, get it out there, let you guys watch it, see what you think. I'll tell you right now, this one is going to work on both platforms, on both Spotify and YouTube. But if we continue to do this, you're going to want to follow us on YouTube because we're going to be doing a video breakdown. Now, this video happens to be an interview that took place. Now, this one happens to be an interview that took place where I was kind of getting some questions on my opinions about it because it happens to do with the canine handler. What I will tell you all is that listener and viewer discretion is advised. The topic is a little bit of a hard one to listen to and to watch, but everyone wanted my opinion on what was going on, so I figured I would give it to you. So as you guys can see, I got this interview from TikTok with Mad Veteran Talk 1. If I forget to tag him in these videos, either tag him yourselves or get on me in the comments, beat me up until I remember to go back and tag him. This individual, it looks like he has a podcast himself called the FAFO, you guys know what that stands for, podcast where he talks about a lot of the things that we've been talking about. Now, in this particular situation, this is an interview that took place with a handler where his canine was unfortunately killed in the line of duty. And it looks like there were some major issues that popped up. And since the death of his canine, he was forced out of his position. So we're going to let you guys listen. I'm going to pop back and forth, pausing at certain points and letting you know my opinion on what was going on, letting you know some of the things that I've learned through just training and experience.
All right, good morning. My name is Taylor Wright. I used to work for Wadesboro Police Department. On April 11th, I resigned in lieu of termination. I'd like to start by saying when I came to Wadesboro, I was extremely...
Okay, so we'll start there, right? In lieu of termination, we all know what that means, right? So there was some sort of an investigation that took place. His bosses told him, you can either resign or we're going to terminate you. 5-10 years ago, that used to mean that something serious was taken out, or serious happened that was probably pretty egregious. As you're going to find out here, and some of the experiences that we're dealing with as of late, it's not always the case. Now what's happening a lot more is, do you give your opinion? Well, we're going to find some reason to get you to this position.
Excited to work for this community. While many people have seen this community as one that is less than, I never have. I truly love serving this community. While I've made my mistakes, I believe that with enough effort, you can change a community for the better. So I'll start back in.
So now what I'm going to say right here is that he mentions making mistakes and, feeling that you can move on and get better. I don't know all the details. I don't know the background of the investigation of whatever took place. That sounds like maybe some things were, he was at fault for some things, but take the totality of the circumstances, because you're going to see as things move on just how bad things got.
January, Chief gave me the opportunity to become a canine officer. I can't speak for anything.
Props to him for being willing to say this in front of his chief.
Relationship with Josh was at the time, but we did receive a canine from Josh Harrington, which was Canine Blitz. Whatever agreement they had, that was between them. I was not a part of it. I did, however, go meet Blitz. The day we met Blitz, I went down there with Chief, spoke to Josh, we looked at the dog, and then I came back, I believe it was 2 weeks later.
Now, this is a little bit weird, kind of concerning. The way he makes it sound like was that the dog was already picked out, that he did not have the option to have any say-so on what dog was picked, that the dog was picked out for him, he got to meet it, and then there was a 2-week, grace period or downtime in between seeing the dog and then actually picking the dog up. So I'm not really sure what was going on there.
Don't quote me on that. I can, however, speak for the trials I went through. When starting this canine program, I was made aware that we would need to look for donations for equipment. We did find small equipment at the police department, such as leashes, a few toys, a harness, vest, stuff like that for the canine, but nothing of major equipment. The car cage, door panels, and canine school was not going to be bought or paid for by the town. I found
that is a huge red flag, right? The town isn't going to pay for the training, for the equipment of the vehicle, and they had to find used stuff throughout the PD. That happens in some small towns, granted, but the idea that the city or the town or whatever is not going to pay for training or for the equipment to keep the dog safe, that's your first red flag.
A cage on Facebook Marketplace for $250, which I went to pick up on my own accord. The town did reimburse me for the cage. The door panels and the window panels,
so at least he was reimbursed.
I paid for out of pocket with no reimbursement.
But not the other part.
I was told the budget was only $500 and that we could not afford it. Everything else would have to be handled on our own.
Okay. If you are a leader or an admin position at any police department, $500 for a canine budget is unacceptable. If that's all the money you have, do not get a canine.
Now, the canine course as well was not going to be paid for by the town. Many handlers and departments know you're suggested to attend a canine course. While it's not required by the state of North Carolina, it is recommended so that you have a certification.
So here in my state, it is not required either to be certified to be able to run a dog. However, with that being said, there's almost no agencies in the whole state that do not certify their dogs. They understand you have to have that training, you have to have that school to know what you're doing, and it's a litigation thing. So, yes, you need the training.
I did reach out to K2 Solutions as I worked there prior, and their school started in March for canine. I began there March 5th for the exact date of the school. I began attending the course on all my days off while still working a night shift, as I was informed we could not be able to attend the full 6 weeks due to coverage for shifts. Shift change occurred, and I began having issues with the sergeant that was moved to my shift. I would be called out to most, if not all, traffic stops due to having Blitz with me. As many know, every stop does not require a canine. Many things were reported, and I can't speak if anything was corrected or not corrected, as that is not my job. But the sergeant was doing inappropriate and things that were not correct.
This is a little weird here. First off, making him go to training on days that he's working and, pulling double shifts, that's ridiculous. Okay. Again, if you cannot afford to send your handler to canine school, then don't do it. If your scheduling does not allow for it, then you don't have the schedule for a canine or a canine handler. He talks about the sergeant, having him go to every single traffic stop. He is correct. Obviously, you don't need a canine for every single stop. However, when it comes to showing that you're using the dog, it's not a bad idea to go to any stop that you can if you're available. If you're on a call, if you're stopping cars yourself, yeah, don't go over there if you're not needed. But at the same time, remember there were times when I was a handler, some of the neighboring agencies would talk about how they had so much stuff going on. They were finding so many drugs that they would tell their people, hey, if you got a car that you know there's nothing in, and you presume that there's nothing in, still call me over so that I can run my dog around and I can show that my dog doesn't alert on every car. I don't know what the issues he had with the sergeant were, but it sounds like obviously right off the bat that there were some conflicting things going on, and I think we're going to hear a little more bit about that in the rest of the video.
I was told by the sergeant when to work my dog and what to do. There were many times we would go to calls and he would ask me to get the dog out and run a track, and when I said I was uncomfortable, he would tell me to do it anyway and that he had contacted the chief. This happened many occasions at many calls and many night shifts. Now I'll move to the night that Canine Blitz was...
Okay, so we'll obviously take a break there because that's a big piece of information. This tells me that there is a major issue within the department if they are not relying upon their subject matter experts, which it sounds like technically he's not because he didn't go through school, but he is the handler. It is his dog. Whether you're a sergeant, you're a chief, whoever you are, you should be relying upon the handler to give you advice, to understand if it's an appropriate situation to run the dog or not run the dog. This individual looks young. I don't know how many years he's had on the force. I know that, when I was young, especially when I just had the dog, I was pretty young. It took time before I realized that it took time before I knew when I should step up and say no, and no means no. And you might be giving me a direct order, but I'm the one who knows how this dog operates. I know when it's safe, when it's not safe. I know when, the constitutional law applies, when case law applies. So if I need to, I'll put my foot down. Something tells me that either he'd been reprimanded before or he's just young in his career and he didn't know yet when he could say no means no.
Killed. I was put in the worst situation of my life.
This gets tough here. It's tough to watch. I don't know how long he had the dog, but that really doesn't matter because as soon as you take possession of the dog, it becomes another member of your family that you're hanging out with almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So whether he had this dog for 2 days or 2 years, I totally understand.
Around 2...
He makes it sound like it happened pretty quickly.
The sergeant of shift conducted a traffic stop on a small truck. I was requested to respond. Upon arrival, I was informed of an individual who supposedly had felony warrants. I did not check this myself. This traffic stop led to a chase when the driver fled the scene. During this chase, I was informed over radio traffic to deploy my canine. When the chase ended in Montgomery County, the suspect jumped and ran from the vehicle, and I was screamed at to deploy my canine. I did, however, hesitate, but unfortunately, I deployed my canine anyway, worried if I would get in trouble for not following an order.
Okay, so as you heard there, I don't know the backstory. If he just wasn't comfortable with his, level of training at that time, he says that he doesn't feel comfortable deploying his canine, but he did so anyway because he was given a direct order and he doesn't want to get in trouble. Kind of like what I just talked about a second ago. I'm confused as to why he was hesitant to. Like I said, maybe it was the training, but everything that I've heard so far would equal a good canine deployment. So not really sure what that's about, but regardless, he didn't feel comfortable. He was still ordered to do so, and then he did.
Blitz took down the suspect 2 houses down in the backyard. With no backup, I waited and called for other officers to come to my locations before removing my dog due to not having backup. Blitz was caught off the bite with a toy. He accidentally grabbed my hand. Not knowing he had my hand, Blitz was not letting go. I begged many officers on scene to help me, specifically instructing the sergeant many times to grab Blitz's collar and lift him up in order to choke him off.
Okay, so there's a lot of confusing things there going on, right? The dog takes down the suspect 2 houses down, but there was a huge gap there between this handler's backup getting there, and I don't know why that would be. 2 houses isn't that far. They should have been right there with him. The second part that I kind of question is him taking the dog off with a toy. Young handler, young dog, not entirely sure why he would do that. The only time I've ever, and granted, different state, different places do things differently, right? The only time that I've ever seen handlers doing this is when there's outing problems, meaning having the dog release. And a lot of the time I see this especially when they have a hard time letting go of their ball, their reward. And the whole idea is, if you listen to me, you get another reward. And you see that letting go doesn't mean you're never going to get it again. If they don't let go, there has to be a correction. And when it comes to apprehension work or bite work, typically this only would take place in training. The idea being that there's no level of training that you can have that will simulate a real bite. That sounds kind of wrong. You can train as much as you want to, but a real bite is always going to be different than a training bite. With a training bite, there's always going to be equipment. The dog is going to know the difference. So the idea of trying to take a dog off of a bite in a real world, real bite scenario confuses me, is all I'm saying. So we'll keep listening here.
I explained how to complete choking the dog off. However, I received no help.
Which is just called
sure of how to get him off, and with
taking
no
them off
help
strong.
For several seconds and minutes, as Blitz did not drop the ball in training, I knew he was not going to let go of my hand. I instructed that with no help, someone would have to shoot him. That is when a taser went off and Blitz immediately let go. When the 5-second charge...
Okay, lot to break down here. He's saying the dog was on him for seconds to minutes, which is a problem. This just emphasizes how bad you need to train with your canine units. Patrol needs to train with them. SWAT needs to train with them. Detectives need to train with them. You need to know how to handle an oh shit scenario like this. Someone should have stepped up and taken that dog off strong. That's exactly what he was talking about doing. He kind of confirmed my previous suspicions here. The dog had problems letting go of his toy. Again, that all comes with lack of training. It comes with a young dog, young handler. That's something you have to work out over time. I'm confused, though, by him saying and telling the other officers, if you don't take him off strong, you're going to have to shoot him. That's a big problem. Yeah, there are some dogs that, you know, if they grab on, that might be the only way, but that's like a last case scenario. In fact, every handler that I've ever known, there's always that one guy at the department that's like, if that dog bites me, I'm going to shoot it. And the handler is always like, well, you better dig 2 graves because there's going to be an issue there if you shoot my dog. I've never heard of a handler telling other officers, if you don't take him off, you're going to have to shoot it. And it sounds like at this point, one of the other officers deploys their taser, I'm assuming into the dog. He's talking about the 5-second charge. So I'm assuming someone tased the dog and the dog came off of him, which is what happens when you tase a dog. And in all honesty, I kind of have to give that other officer props because you got a dog that's not letting go. The handler is saying to shoot it. And this other officer stepped up and said, nah, let me tase it and see if that works. And it looks like it did. You know, something else that I will say here before we moving on just popped into my head. It has to do with that outing with the toy. 2 things that popped in my head. First and foremost, we work very, very hard through training to get a verbal out, meaning we tell the dog to come off, the dog comes off and recalls to us. It takes a lot of time and a lot of training, which clearly this handler was not provided with. It's one of the hardest things that you're going to do as a canine handler. With all of that being said, we have to be able to do that to certify every year And even then, every handler I've ever talked to has said when you get a real bite on the street, you're not outing your dog. You're going up there and you're giving him the hard out. You're grabbing their collar. You're taking them off strong. You're peeling away while your backup comes in and places the suspect into custody. There's no reason to put that added level of stress, especially when it is a different environment. Like I said before, that you cannot properly train. You can properly train for it. You cannot properly simulate it through training. Things are going to be different for the dog. Especially, look at this guy. You know, the training that he had was on days. He works overnights. The dog is now in a different environment, an overnight environment, with people that it sounds like he doesn't get to train with, the fellow patrol officers. He just got a real bite. That's different than training. He's not biting equipment. He's biting a human. So yeah, what I'm getting at is we've always said, even if our dogs have perfect verbal outs in training and in certification, real bite, you're going in, you're taking them off strong, rewarding them, praising them up, letting them know they did a good job, but you're not trying to take them off verbally or with a toy. Secondly, during my canine handler course, my former retired and now passed away canine Havoc got me one time. One time he got me. Same situation. We just got on with a training track. I had a toy in my hand. He was going for the toy, and he got my hand instead. The difference was we'd been training together for quite a while. Havoc knew who Dad was. He knew who the Alpha was. And he knew as soon as he bit me what he had just done. I didn't have to correct him. I didn't have to do anything. He came off immediately, and he was like, the look in his eyes was, oh crap, I know what I did. From what it sounds like, these two had not been together very long. They did not have the proper training, and the dog, thinking he was going for the toy, got the handler, and it sounds like maybe that alpha dominance had not been properly established. Granted, again, in a different environment, adrenaline is pumping, handler's adrenaline is pumping, the dog's adrenaline is pumping, all these people around him is probably amped up to the next level, right? So a lot of different things that went wrong here. A lot of things that I don't necessarily fault the handler for, because he was set up to fail. Excuse me. When you don't have the proper training, you're set up to fail.
Was up, another one came, and he came running back to me after the second charge. He was not aggressive, and he was trained to return to his handler. At this time, many rounds started going off. I began screaming commands for Blitz to lay down so no one would see him as a threat. Blitz followed that command and stayed in place when giving a stay command. When someone moved, Blitz jumped up to re-engage, and I immediately recalled him. Blitz again followed this command and began running back to me. At this time, many rounds went off in mine and Blitz's direction. This time, Blitz was hit and screaming.
Okay, let's unpack this. 2 rounds, 2 volleys of gunfire, from what it sounds like and from what I'm surmising, is from the deputies to, or the officers towards the handler. Regardless of what that dog was doing, take the dog out of the equation, this is a huge training failure, right? This is a crossfire situation. Why are we sending rounds towards the handler in this case? That baffles me, and that kind of tells me that maybe it kind of gives you an insight into the training and into the background of what was happening here. You're shooting rounds at a dog that's also going towards the handler. That's insane. I can understand the confusion on the other officer's parts. You have a dog that just bit the handler. Obviously, the training is not there, like I keep saying, and the dog walking towards another officer or running back towards the handler, which is what a recall is. Like, they don't just walk back, they run back. If you don't know what those are, I can see why you might think the dog is being aggressive towards the handler and going back to re-engage him. But the idea that you're going to fire rounds in the direction of the handler just blows my mind. So,
as I was yelling for him, Blitz ran off. I was unable to locate him at the time, and when I did locate him, Blitz had lost so much blood. I ran to the car, immediately calling the chief to inform him of the issue, as he told me he would be there as fast as he could. I was told to see EMS, where I refused medical and would not leave Blitz behind. I then stayed with Blitz.
Again, discretion here. This is very difficult. Difficult to hear, difficult to go through.
I then stayed with Blitz until Chief arrived. While I remained waiting for the Chief to arrive, I had informed the sergeant that Blitz was suffering and he was not going to make it. This changed nothing. When Chief arrived, I was given the option to choose what would happen to Blitz. Knowing the closest emergency vet was over a half an hour away and he had lost too much blood, I asked for him to be put out of his misery. I couldn't do it myself. The sergeant stated he would, and when attempting to put Blitz down, he had shot him many times. And at no point did Blitz charge me or anyone else that was still on scene.
Okay. Again, a lot to unpack here. This falls back to a lack of training. Again, this is clearly the theme of this whole video. Through your handler course, and then through additional training that is available after you become certified, there are different trainings to teach you how to address your dog if they are wounded in the line of duty, or just in general, right? Havoc's injury happened at home where he got his tail caught in a door. I was taught how to address that injury, to do what I could to fix that injury until we could get to a vet. Obviously, this dog has several rounds in it. I don't know how else to put that to make it sound better. The dog had been shot several times. That is, yes, the dog is losing a lot of blood. The nearest emergency vet being a half hour away does not change things for me. I'm getting whatever I can put on that dog, gauze, seals, something to try to address those wounds. I'm getting in the back of the car with the dog while another officer is driving the car, and we're going lights and sirens as fast as we can safely to get to that vet. I'm not, and again, he didn't know any better, right? He wasn't provided with the training to think about these scenarios. Although, hindsight being 2020, we're taught as officers to always be thinking about scenarios like this and what are we going to do. Waiting for the chief to get on scene before addressing the injuries to the dog, I think was, again, he's being set up for failure. It should have been instinctive. Put the white on the red, get the dog in the car, you are there with the dog, someone else is driving, and we're getting to the emergency vet as quick as we can to try to address the injuries and save Canine Blitz. I don't want to harp on this handler too much because, again, he was not given the tools to succeed. He was set up to fail from the beginning. Not even being able to complete the handler course was being set up to fail from the beginning. I would change the approach here, but he should have been given the training to be prepared for this situation.
What happened that night is inexcusable. I was given an order and followed that direct order. In return, not only was I punished, but so
I'm not even going to talk about putting the dog down and what it took. That's ridiculous. Be better, right? From the officer the sergeant that decided he was going to take the actions. Be better, right? Know what you're doing. Now we're going back into the following a direct order. Again, I think that given the information provided here, I think it was a legitimate reason to deploy the dog, and it was a good bite. Unless this handler doesn't feel comfortable using his dog to apprehend because of the lack of training.
was Blitz. My name has been slandered, my reputation has been torn apart, and I have received death threats, hate messages, and much more. The individual who should have been terminated and punished goes unpunished. I believe in the work Blitz and I did and the change we were making in the community. I was going to be terminated for following an order. I resigned in order to attempt to save my career, and I should have not been pushed out the door.
Okay, so he says that he was punished or investigated for this incident. I'm not sure what specifically they're saying, what policy they're saying he violated. He's saying that he was following a direct order. Again, he feels the sergeant should have been terminated. It's not the sergeant's job to give an order of when to use the dog. I learned this early on in my career when we had a car chase that ended in a felony stop, barricaded subject in the car. The commander on scene, who ironically was a former canine handler, told me to get my dog out. And I asked him later, like, why? We're not sending the dog in that car. And he said, well, it's a stat. You can say that you deployed your dog. It's a stat. I understand needing to show how much the dogs are being used, kind of like I talked about in the traffic stops before, but there was no reason to have Havoc out at that time. It's one more concern of mine now while I'm trying to negotiate with the barricaded person in their car that I just chased for 30 minutes. I learned very quickly, I'm the handler. I know what's going on. I know the situation, the scenario, the scene, and to put my foot down when I need to put my foot down. This sounds like a proper deployment, but if the handler is not comfortable doing it, then the sergeant's direct order should not override that. And if he's following a direct order because he'd been punished before or been threatened with punishment before, now you've got a situation on your hands that he's not in the wrong. Again, he's being set up for failure.
Blitz should not be gone today.
Very true.
While this will not change me being unemployed and it will not bring Blitz back, I hope the community sees the truth. There are many failures from top to bottom, and accountability is key. I should have disobeyed that order that day. But throughout this whole situation, I was never set up for success. This starts with the town, and I hope they give future officers the training and resources they need to complete their training and work, whatever specialty or job that may be. I should have never been placed in a position to outfit the equipment for the canine car or the training school. I should have been allotted the time to train and work with Blitz, and a sergeant should not have been given any orders on how to work a canine when he did not have experience and he was
Very
not
true.
in charge of them. This failure has resulted in me both losing my dog and my career. Now, end by saying Blitz was an amazing and talented canine. He was a part of my family, and he was a great partner.
Like I said, no matter how long he had that dog, part of the family. 2 hours, 2 days, 2 months, 2
I'm
years.
not the only one who loved Blitz and cared for him as well. This loss does not only affect me. I thank everyone for hearing me speak, and I hope many can see the truth and the unfortunate and unfair position I was placed in. And I appreciate the opportunity for allowing me to speak.
So I don't know if this was a post-disciplinary hearing. It sounds like he already resigned from the department. Obviously, there's two sides to every story, but just the way he's describing things from scenarios that I've seen before, it almost seems like the canine passed away. The community was upset about that. As soon as it hit the news, and I've seen this before too. Canine passed away due to unforeseen circumstances, unfortunate circumstances, and people were immediately calling for the handler's head. Like the handler could have, in that situation, the handler couldn't do anything. Calls coming into the police department, wanting the officer to be terminated. And again, it was nothing the handler could have done. It was something totally out of their hands. So I'm guessing what happened here, he talked about having death threats sent his way. The dog passed away, and I'm assuming the community was in an uproar and bombarding the police department. And instead of backing this officer, instead of admitting fault, we find a scapegoat and we find a sacrificial lamb. And this handler was that sacrificial lamb, where I don't know what he was investigated for. I mean, he's saying he followed a direct order, so I don't know what he was investigated for. But ultimately, they asked him to resign in lieu of termination, and he did. And now he's going to have to carry this around for the rest of his life and the rest of his career. And that's very unfortunate. Assuming that what this canine handler is saying and everything he's saying is true, then he was sent out as like I said, a sacrificial lamb. And I know all too well what that's like. This was, like he said, like I've been saying, a failure from the beginning. The group Worthless Handler, any canine handler is a part of that social media group. It is actually a company that sells things. I'll tag them also. They have a lot of great products out there. They literally just posted yesterday, I think it was, a meme about what admin seem to think canines are. They think that, hey, we paid somewhere between $5,000 and $25,000 for this dog, maybe even more at this point. I don't know. They think this dog should come out ready to go and should need no further training. We paid $25,000 for the dog. Why isn't it ready to go? They don't understand that you need to train with the dog constantly. You need to certify with the dog. This handler should have been given the opportunity to go through the handler course. Should not have had to worry about working shift around that. Should not have had to worry about paying for it himself. Then he should have been given bi-monthly at a minimum training with the canine to avoid these, not avoid the situation, but to avoid the pitfalls of not training with the dog and knowing how to work through these scenarios. I recently spoke to a sheriff who was a handler himself, and this is probably why he understood this. His department did not have a dog for almost 10 years after he retired his dog. Not because people weren't interested, but because he knew it took a certain type of person to be a canine handler. And he was not going to just appoint anyone so that he could tell the community our department has a canine. That's a big thing with a lot of departments. They want to be able to tell the community, we have a dog. We have a drug-seeking, people-finding dog. I don't know how many times I've heard of command staff wanting the handler to use their dog to go find a missing kid. A dog that's trained to bite at the end of a track, right? That's what we train them for, is to find bad guys and to apprehend them at the end of a track. Not a missing juvenile who might get torn up by a dog. It's things like that. Admin think these dogs should be robots that should not require any additional training or any additional equipment and should just be ready to go right off the bat. And this is the type of thing that you see. A canine lost its life. A handler could have lost his life. Let's face it, the suspect could have lost his life. Any one of those other... If we have crossfire like this, anyone on that scene could have been killed. And it's a failure of training. It's a failure of leadership. And that's where we're at right now. This is a very sad story. I see why I was approached and why people wanted to hear my take on it. Yeah, there were probably some downfalls on the handler side of things as well. Some things he could have done differently. But he was not given the training that he needed to succeed. This was all put on his shoulders. Like I said, he looks young. Probably starting off in his career and getting a dog that soon wasn't the right choice. They should not have given a young officer a dog. But he didn't know. He doesn't have the training and experience, and he wasn't given the training and experience. He said it there at the end. If you guys are going to move forward, you need to give your officers the right equipment and training and set them up for success as opposed to failure. He was set up for failure, and not surprisingly, failure occurred. I hope that you all like this new format. It's not going to be all of our episodes. We're going to be doing this, peppering it in every now and again. This one, like I said, worked for both Spotify and YouTube because it was an interview. I think we're going to get into a lot more video breakdowns as a side piece to the podcast. So please make sure you are following us on YouTube, spinning our gears just like everything else, so that when we have more of these video breakdowns, you can see what's going on as we're breaking it down. My heart goes out to this deputy or officer, as well as the fallen canine. I truly hope that he can rebound from this. It's just sad circumstances what he was put through. So I think that's all that I can say in regards to that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's any other way to end this besides that. This is a sad situation, a sad scenario, and it should not have happened. So my heart goes out to him. My heart goes out to the dog, as well as everyone else impacted by this. On that note, we'll be back with more content, whether it be interview type podcasts or video breakdowns. Obviously, we're streaming on platforms like TikTok and YouTube and Twitch for video game type stuff, but we will continue to bring you the OG material as well as some of this new stuff. Please let us know if you want to see more of this. If you have videos you want broken down, go to www.spinningourgears.com. Click that contact us link and send us an email. So, all right, guys. Thank you for tuning in for this little 45 minute episode. We'll be back soon. Stay safe, and we'll get to this.